The great hall was thick with a scent of pine and winter, but a more primal aroma lay beneath it, the unmistakable musk of alphas convened for the seasonal claiming. My skin tingled with a heightened sense of awareness as I flattened myself against the cold stone, attempting to blend in with the other omegas presented as offerings. Unlike them, with their scented skin and carefully practiced shy looks, I had not been prepared for this. My light blonde hair was loose and unstyled, missing the elaborate braids that signified a traditional upbringing. "Stand tall, girl," the handler hissed, her fingers digging into my shoulder. "The Alpha King himself is here tonight. Show a little respect." I bit the inside of my cheek until I tasted metal. Respect was a privilege for those not used as bargaining chips to placate powerful men. 3 days prior, I was gathering herbs in the woods bordering our impoverished village, when the council elders approached my cottage with their offer, my freedom in exchange for our village's safety. My grandmother's silver pendant felt heavy on my chest, concealed by the flimsy ceremonial gown they had made me wear. "Remember, Alara," she had murmured before she passed, "your heart is the one thing they cannot seize unless you give it to them." The pendant was etched with a wolf coiled around a moon, a symbol from the old faith, from a time before alphas ruled with an iron grip and omegas were treated as property. The massive oak doors at the far end of the hall creaked open, and an immediate hush fell over the room. The very air seemed to hold its breath. A towering figure stepped in, flanked by warriors whose scars were a testament to victories and fallen foes. But it was he, the Alpha King, who held every eye. He moved with the grace of a predator, each step measured and strong, a dark fur draped over his shoulders despite the blazing fires that warmed the hall. His expression was a mask as he scanned the room, but as his eyes passed over the line of omegas, a flicker of something crossed his face, something that made my heart skip a beat. His gaze found mine, and the world seemed to shift on its axis. "That one," he commanded, his voice slicing through the stillness. "The pale one with the wild hair." Every head swiveled in my direction, and the handler's grip became a painful vice. I couldn't breathe, couldn't process what was happening. This was not the plan. I was supposed to be ignored, a mere token from a village too destitute to offer a suitable mate. I was supposed to go home after my duty was done, free to live as I wished. But the Alpha King had looked at me, and only at me. They escorted me to his chambers like a lamb to the slaughter, 2 guards on either side of me as we navigated the winding corridors of stone and tapestries. The Alpha King had departed the hall right after making his choice, not staying to see the gasps and murmurs that erupted in his wake. I had been selected over the daughters of nobles, over omegas who had been trained since birth in the arts of satisfying an alpha mate. "Don't even think about running," one guard said, though his voice held a hint of compassion. "The king has no patience for disobedience." The other guard scoffed. "As if she would get far. No one leaves these castle walls unless King Caden allows it." Caden. The name itself felt like a sharp edge against my skin. The chamber door loomed ahead, its surface intricately carved with scenes of wolves on the hunt under a full moon. My grandmother's stories flooded my mind, tales of alphas who transformed in the moonlight, becoming the beasts whose spirits they embodied. Stories I had dismissed as the fanciful ramblings of an old woman trying to make a cruel world make sense. "Wait here," the first guard ordered, knocking sharply on the door. Then both men turned and walked back down the corridor, leaving me by myself. My fingers sought my grandmother's pendant, gripping it through the thin fabric of my dress. If I made a run for it, would I even make it to the end of the hall before being caught? And what would befall my village when the Alpha King's fury was unleashed upon them for my defiance? The door swung open and a wave of heat rolled out. Not the cozy warmth of a hearth, but the searing heat of a blacksmith's forge, the kind that reshapes steel into weapons. "Enter." His voice was devoid of emotion, yet it compelled absolute compliance. My legs carried me forward on their own, into a room larger than my entire cottage. Furs were strewn across the stone floor, and a massive bed dominated one wall, its posts crafted from whole tree trunks, bark still intact. A fire blazed in a hearth large enough to roast a wild boar, its flames casting flickering shadows on walls hung with weapons and maps. The Alpha King, Caden, stood by a table laden with an assortment of fruits, meats, and wine. He had taken off his ceremonial furs, revealing a broad-shouldered frame beneath a simple linen shirt. Without the formal attire, he seemed younger, though no less formidable. "You have not been properly prepared," he noted, his eyes narrowing as he assessed me. "Which village sent you?" "Rivermist," I replied, surprised that my voice was steady despite the fear that coursed through me. "We were given little notice of the tribute." His laugh was a sharp, humorless sound. "Tribute? Is that what they called it?" He moved toward me, and it took all my willpower not to retreat. "What is your name, Omega?" "Alara. Alara," he echoed, as if testing the name on his tongue. "Do you know why you are here, Alara of Rivermist?" I lifted my chin a fraction. "Because our council exchanged me for protection. And do you know what becomes of Omegas chosen at the seasonal claiming?" The stories were common knowledge, shared in hushed tones among the women of my village. Omegas chosen by alphas became their possessions, to be used, to breed, and to be cast aside when their novelty wore off. Some were treated well, adorned with jewels and fine garments like cherished pets. Others were simply never heard from again. "I know enough," I said, struggling to keep the tremor out of my voice. Caden circled me slowly, his gaze like a physical touch on my skin. "I wonder." He came to a halt in front of me, so close I could feel the heat radiating from him. "The elders of your village sent a letter with their offering. Do you know its contents?" I shook my head, my confusion momentarily eclipsing my fear. "It stated that their tribute was flawed, that you suffer from a sickness of the mind that makes you unsuitable." His eyes bored into mine, as if searching for something. "They claimed you have visions, that you converse with spirits no one else can see." The color drained from my face. The sickness was my most guarded secret, known only to my grandmother, who shared the same gift. After her death, I had grown reckless, perhaps, speaking to the spirits of the woods where I might be overheard, or tracing symbols in the earth to placate the ancient beings that watched over our forests. "They sent you here expecting me to reject you," Caden continued, his voice softer now, "to send you back in disgrace, fulfilling their duty without sacrificing anyone they considered of value." Humiliation washed over me, quickly followed by a surge of anger. The council had always disliked me, the strange orphan girl on the outskirts of the village, but to use me as a deliberate slight to the Alpha King. "I did not ask to be here," I said, a tremor finally breaking through my composure. "Send me back, keep me, or kill me, whatever punishment you deem fit for their insult." A flicker of surprise crossed his features, as though he was unaccustomed to such directness. Alphas were used to cowering, submissive Omegas, not those who met their gaze and spoke their minds. "There will be no punishment," he said after a pause. "Not for you, at any rate. As for your village," his smile was that of a predator, "we shall see." He turned away, pouring wine into 2 goblets. "I have a proposal for you, Alara of Rivermist, a way to secure both your freedom and the safety of your village." My heart leaped. "What kind of proposal?" "Spend the night in my bed," he said without preamble, offering a goblet to me. "If you last until dawn without running, I will grant you your freedom. No claiming, no binding. You can return to your village, and I will ensure they are protected despite their discourtesy." I stared at him, looking for the catch. "Just sleep with you? That is all?" His laugh was genuine this time, a deep and surprisingly warm sound. "No, little Omega. Not just sleep." Heat rushed to my cheeks as I understood. "And if I say no?" "Then you go back to Rivermist at once, but my protection is also withdrawn. I am certain there are other kingdoms whose alphas would be eager to claim your lands." It was a choice that was no choice at all. My village, for all its shortcomings, was home to children, elders, and innocent people who had no say in the council's schemes. Without the Alpha King's protection, they would be at the mercy of raiders and rival packs, whose treatment would make Caden seem benevolent. "One night," I repeated, making sure I understood. "And then I am free?" "No claiming bite, no binding ceremony?" He gave a single sharp nod, his face unreadable. "One night, your courage for your freedom." I reached for the goblet he held out, our fingers brushing as I took it. A jolt, like static electricity, passed between us, making me catch my breath. His nostrils flared, and I wondered if he could smell the fear, and something else, something I refused to name, on my skin. "What now?" I asked, taking a small sip of wine to calm my nerves. Caden's eyes darkened as he watched my lips touch the rim of the goblet. "Now we wait for nightfall, and then, Alara of Rivermist, We will find out what you are truly made of." Outside the chamber window, the sun had already begun its descent, painting the sky in fiery shades of red and gold. In a few short hours, I would either win my freedom or lose it forever in the bed of the Alpha King, a man who had chosen me for reasons I could not fathom, but whose eyes held secrets as dark and vast as the approaching night. I paced the room as Caden observed me from a chair near the fire, his silent presence dominating the space. With each pass, I felt his eyes on me, studying my every move with an intensity that made my skin crawl. "Are you plotting an escape?" he finally asked, a hint of amusement in his voice. "The windows are too high, the door is guarded, and I am faster than you." I stopped by the window, looking out at the twilight sky. "I am not planning to escape. I accepted your terms." "Yet you move like a cornered animal." "Perhaps that is because I am one," I retorted, turning to face him. The wine had made me bolder than I should have been. To my surprise, he did not seem angered by my defiance. Instead, he leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, his gaze intent. "Tell me about these visions of yours." My hand flew to my grandmother's pendant. "They are nothing, just village folklore." "Lie to me again, Alara, and our deal is off." The threat was palpable, and I swallowed hard. No one had ever asked me directly about what I saw. They only whispered behind cupped hands, calling me cursed and keeping their children away from the strange girl who talked to herself. "I see, echoes," I said hesitantly. "Sometimes of the past, sometimes of what might be, and sometimes—" I trailed off, knowing how insane it would sound. "Go on," he urged, his voice surprisingly soft. "Sometimes I see beings that others cannot, spirits that inhabit the forests, the rivers, the very stones." I braced myself for his laughter, for accusations of lies or madness. Instead, Caden rose from his chair and approached me slowly, the way one would approach a skittish animal. "What do they look like, these spirits?" The question was so unexpected, I answered without thinking. "Like shadow and light entwined, like the wind made visible. They speak without words and move through spaces that shouldn't exist." He was standing before me now, so close I could see the flecks of amber in his dark eyes. "And what do they tell you, these silent spirits?" "Warnings, mostly. Where not to go in the forest, which plants are for healing and which are for poison." I took a deep breath. 3 days ago they warned me that men were coming to my cottage. I didn't listen. Something in his expression shifted, a flicker of recognition, or perhaps understanding. "Your grandmother possessed the same gift." It was a statement, not a question, but I nodded anyway. "How did you know?" "The pendant you keep touching," he said, his gaze dropping to where my hand still clutched the silver wolf and moon through my dress. "May I see it?" Reluctantly, I lifted the chain over my head and held it out to him, the silver glinting in the firelight. He did not take it from me, but leaned in to inspect the engravings. "Moon speakers," he murmured. "I thought they had all vanished generations ago." "Moon speakers?" Caden straightened, his expression once again guarded. "An ancient bloodline, exceedingly rare among Omegas. There was a time when they were revered, not feared." He motioned for me to put the pendant back on. "Your council has no idea what they have sent me." Before I could ask him to elaborate, a knock sounded at the door. Caden moved away from me, granting permission to enter. A young woman came in, carrying a tray with more food and a steaming pitcher that filled the air with the scent of spiced cider. "Your bath is ready in the adjoining chamber, my king," she said, her eyes fixed on the floor. "And for the Omega as well, if she desires." "Thank you, Mira," Caden replied. When the door had closed behind her, he turned back to me. "You should eat, then bathe. The night is coming." The reminder of what awaited me sent a fresh wave of fear through my body. I went to the table more to keep my hands busy than out of any real hunger. As I picked up a piece of bread, I noticed Caden watching me with a strange expression. "What?" I asked, suddenly feeling self-conscious. Most Omegas brought to me refuse food, either out of fear or from years of being trained to maintain the slender forms that alphas supposedly desire. He gestured to the spread before us. "Eat what you want. You will need your strength." The implication made my cheeks burn, but I forced myself to eat methodically, knowing he was right. Whatever the night held, facing it on an empty stomach would only make things worse. When I had finished eating, Caden led me to a door I hadn't noticed before. He opened it to reveal a smaller room lit by oil lamps. Steam rose from a copper tub large enough for two, its surface sprinkled with flower petals that filled the air with their fragrance. "Take your time," he said, stepping back. "I will bathe after you." I stood there awkwardly, suddenly conscious of how unclean I must seem to him. My hair was a tangled mess from the journey, and my skin still had traces of dirt from the forest under the ceremonial dress. "Will you—" I gestured vaguely, unable to articulate the question. Understanding flickered in his eyes. "I will wait in the other room. Call when you are done." He closed the door, leaving me alone with my racing heart. I undressed quickly, placing my grandmother's pendant carefully on a small table next to the tub. The water was the perfect temperature, and I sank into it with a sigh that was nearly a sob. For a moment, I let myself simply exist in the warmth, pretending I was somewhere else, anywhere else. Reality soon intruded. As I washed, scrubbing away the dirt and the fear with soap that smelled of lavender and rosemary, I considered what was to come. One night in the Alpha King's bed. One night to endure whatever he asked of me. And then I would be free. I could do this. I had survived worse. The winter my parents died, leaving me an orphan at 12. The whispers and the isolation as my strangeness became more apparent. The hunger when the villagers refused to trade with the cursed girl. I could survive one night with a man, even one as intimidating as Caden. When I finally stepped out of the water, I found a soft drying cloth and a deep blue robe laid out for me. Not a ceremonial dress, not the submissive garb of an Omega, but a simple robe that covered me from neck to ankle. I dried my long blonde hair as best I could, running my fingers through the knots, then put on the robe and fastened my pendant around my neck once more. "I am finished," I called out, my voice sounding small in the steam-filled room. The door opened at once, as if he had been waiting just outside. Caden entered, his gaze sweeping over me in a way that made me intensely aware of how the damp robe clung to my curves. "Your turn," I said, moving to get past him. His hand shot out and caught my arm, his grip gentle but firm. "Wait." I froze, my pulse hammering beneath his touch. He was so close I could smell him, pine, smoke, and something wild that I couldn't identify. My Omega instincts, long dormant, stirred to life in response to his nearness, urging me to submit, to bare my neck to this Alpha who exuded power. I fought against it, meeting his gaze steadily, though my limbs were trembling. "There is something you should know before the night is fully upon us," he said, his voice low. "I chose you for a reason, Alara of Rivermist." "Because I am a moon speaker," I guessed, the unfamiliar word still feeling strange on my tongue. His lips curved into a smile that did not reach his eyes. "That is part of it, but there is more." He released my arm, his fingers trailing lightly over my skin as he did so. "When I entered that hall tonight, I caught a scent I have been searching for my entire reign, something I had started to believe was nothing more than a myth." A shiver ran down my spine, despite the warmth of the room. "What did you smell?" "My fated mate." The words hung between us, heavy with meaning. Fated mates were the stuff of legends, an Alpha and an Omega destined for one another, bound by forces beyond their control. Most people dismissed such tales as romantic foolishness, a way to make arranged matches more bearable. I took a step back. "That is impossible. Fated mates do not exist." "Don't they?" Caden challenged, his eyes glinting with a primal light. "Then why did every Alpha in that hall become agitated when you walked in? Why did I know exactly where you were before I even saw you? Why does your scent call to me like nothing else I have ever known?" "If that were true," I countered, "why offer me my freedom? Why not just claim me?" His expression hardened. "Because a true mate cannot be taken, only freely given. And you, little Omega, are as wild and untamed as the spirits you converse with." He stepped closer again, and this time I did not retreat. "I want your surrender, Alara, but I want it to be a gift, not something I have taken." "So this night is a test," I said, understanding beginning to dawn, "to see if I will submit of my own free will." "This night is an opportunity," he corrected, "for both of us to find out what lies between us. If you feel nothing by sunrise, you are free to go as I promised. But if you feel even a fraction of what I felt in that hole—" He let the sentence hang in the air. I lifted my chin. "And if I walk away anyway?" A dangerous light flickered in his eyes. "Then I will let you go, as I promised. But know this, Moonspeaker, What exists between true mates does not diminish with distance. It only grows more agonizing, more insistent, until it consumes you from the inside out. Is that a threat? It is a warning from one who has seen it happen. He stepped away, creating space between us. I will bathe now. Wait for me by the fire. As the door closed behind him, I leaned against the wall, my legs suddenly weak. Fated mate. The idea was terrifying, not because I disbelieved it, but because deep down a part of me was afraid he might be right. The jolt I had felt when our hands touched, the awareness that vibrated under my skin whenever he was near, the way my body responded to his scent despite my mind's resistance, these were not normal reactions. I returned to the main chamber and stood before the fire, watching the flames and trying to calm my racing thoughts. Outside, the night had completely fallen, the sky a black canvas dotted with stars. In less than an hour I would be in Caden's bed, holding up my end of the bargain, but now the stakes were different. This was no longer just about surviving one night to earn my freedom. This was about denying, or accepting, a bond that, if the legends were true, could tie me to this alpha for all time. The door to the bathing chamber opened, and Caden emerged, wearing only a pair of loose linen trousers that hung low on his hips. Droplets of water still clung to his chest and shoulders, glistening in the firelight. Scars crisscrossed his skin, a map of battles fought and won, etched permanently into his flesh. "Are you afraid?" he asked, moving to stand beside me in front of the fire. I considered lying, then decided against it. "Yes." "Of me, or of what you might feel?" The question struck too close to home. "Both," I admitted. He nodded, as if my answer pleased him. "Honesty. Good." He gestured toward the massive bed. "Shall we begin our night, Alara of River Mist?" The moment had come. My heart was pounding so loudly I was sure he could hear it. One night to endure. One night to fight the pull I already felt toward this alpha who claimed to be my fated mate. One night to either secure my freedom or to surrender it forever. I moved toward the bed, each step feeling like a choice between two different futures. Behind me, I could feel, rather than hear Caden following, a predator patient in his pursuit, confident that his prey had nowhere to run that he could not follow. As I reached the edge of the bed, his voice came, low and intimate, near my ear. "Remember, little Omega, if you last until dawn, you are free. But first," his fingers brushed the hair from my neck, sending a cascade of shivers down my spine. "Let's see what you're made of." His touch lingered at the nape of my neck, a faint pressure that made my pulse quicken. I stood there, frozen, caught between the instinct to flee and the inexplicable urge to lean into his warmth. "Turn around." Caden's command was soft. I complied, not out of submission, but because I needed to see his face, to decipher the intent in those amber-flecked eyes. He stood close, too close, his bare chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm. The scars I had noticed earlier spoke of violence, of battles survived and pain endured. Without thinking, I reached for a particularly nasty one that ran from his collarbone to his ribs. He caught my wrist before I touched him, his grip firm but not painful. "Curious little moon speaker," he murmured, always reaching for what others are afraid to touch. "How did you get this one?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. A shadow passed over his face. "An assassination attempt, 3 years ago. The would-be killer believed an Omega's blade would be too small for an Alpha to notice until it was too late. Was he right?" "She," he corrected, "was almost right. I only survived because the poison on her blade was weak." His thumb traced circles on the inside of my wrist, sending a warmth up my arm. Since then, I have learned to not take anyone's submission at face value. The unspoken meaning hung in the air between us, that my resistance, my refusal to cower, was what had drawn him to me in that hall of perfumed, well-trained Omegas. "Is that why you offered me this deal?" I asked. "Because you don't trust submission that comes too easily?" His lips curved into a smile that transformed his face, softening the hard lines of power into something almost boyish. "I offered because you looked like you were about to bite the handler who dared to touch you without your permission, because your eyes held defiance even as your body trembled with fear." His hand slid from my wrist to my waist, resting where the robe was tied. "Because true mates should come together as equals, not as conqueror and conquered." "We are not true mates," I insisted, though the words sounded hollow even to me. "Then this night will prove it, one way or another," he replied, his confidence unshaken. His fingers found the knot of my robe. "May I?" The question surprised me. Alphas didn't ask for permission. They took. Especially Alpha Kings with Omegas already in their chambers, already committed to a night in their beds. "Yes," I whispered, uncertainty and something darker, more primal, warring within me. He untied the knot slowly, his gaze locked on mine as the robe fell open. The cool air on my skin raised goosebumps. I resisted the urge to cover myself, standing naked before him with only my grandmother's pendant between my breasts. Caden's eyes darkened as he looked me over, his breathing becoming more ragged. "Beautiful," he murmured, his voice rough with restraint, "like moonlight given form." Heat bloomed on my skin, spreading from my cheeks down my neck and chest. No one had ever looked at me like that, as if I were precious, desirable, worth savoring. "Your turn," I said, surprising myself with my boldness. His eyebrows rose slightly, but he complied, untying the drawstring of his linen pants and letting them fall. He stood before me, magnificent and unashamed, every inch the Alpha King. My breath caught in my throat at the sight of him, at the raw power of the body now revealed to me. "Satisfied?" he asked, a hint of amusement in his voice. "Intimidated?" I admitted honestly. His laugh was unexpected and genuine. "Honesty again. You continue to surprise me, Alara." He reached for me, his hand settling on my waist. "We have all night. There is no rush." He led me to the bed, the furs soft against my bare skin. I expected him to cover me with his body immediately, to claim what I had implicitly offered by agreeing to his deal. Instead, he stretched out beside me, propped on one elbow, his free hand hovering just above my collarbone. "May I touch you?" he asked again, his restraint evident in the tension of his muscles. I nodded, not trusting my voice. His fingers traced a path from my collarbone to my shoulder, then down my arm, as if mapping every inch of me. "When I scented you in that hall," he said, his voice low and intimate. It was like finding something I didn't know I had lost, like coming home after a lifetime of wandering. "That is just alpha instinct," I argued weakly. "The drive to claim." He shook his head, his hand continuing its gentle exploration across my stomach, careful to avoid my breasts and the more intimate places that already ached for his touch. "I have been surrounded by Omegas since I took the throne, beautiful ones, willing ones, trained ones. None of them affected me like this." His scent was everywhere now, wrapping around me like a physical embrace, pine and smoke and male arousal, making my head swim and my body respond in ways I couldn't control. My Omega nature, so carefully suppressed for years, surged toward his alpha presence, recognizing something my mind still fought to deny. "What if this is just physical?" I whispered. "Just bodies responding to bodies?" Caden's hand paused at my hip. "Then why can I sense your thoughts before you speak them? Why did I know to bring you blue robes when I have never seen you wear them? Why does every instinct I possess scream that you belong with me, beside me, under me?" His words sent a shiver through me that had nothing to do with fear. "Because you are an Alpha King used to getting what you want. Because we are fated," he countered, leaning closer until his lips hovered just above mine. "Tell me you don't feel it too, Alara. Lie to me if you can." I couldn't lie. Not when his proximity made my skin burn with need, not when his scent clouded my thoughts, not when everything within me strained toward him like a flower seeking the sun. Instead of answering, I closed the distance between us, pressing my lips to his in a kiss born of curiosity as much as desire. For one heartbeat he remained still, as though shocked by my initiative. Then he responded with a hunger that stole my breath, his hand sliding into my hair to cradle my head as he deepened the kiss. The touch of his lips against mine sent electricity racing through my body, igniting a fire that consumed rational thought. I moaned against his mouth, my hands finding purchase on his shoulders, my nails digging into his skin as I pulled him closer. He broke the kiss, both of us gasping for air. "Do you believe me now?" he asked, his voice strained with the effort of restraint. "I believe there is something between us," I admitted. "Whether it is fate or chemistry, I don't know." He smiled, satisfaction gleaming in his eyes. "Then let me convince you." His mouth found mine again, more demanding this time, as his body shifted to cover mine. The weight of him pressing me into the furs felt right in a way I couldn't explain, as though my body had been designed to receive his. His hands explored me more boldly now, cupping my breast, his thumb brushing over the sensitive peak until I arched into his touch with a gasp. "Tell me what you want," he murmured against my throat, where his lips traced a burning path toward my pulse point, dangerously close to where a claiming bite would mark me as his forever. "I don't know," I whispered truthfully. This terrain was unfamiliar, my body's responses new and overwhelming. "Then let me show you," he replied, his mouth continuing its journey downward. What followed was a slow, exquisite education in pleasure. Caden's hands and mouth discovered places I hadn't known could bring such sensation, drawing sounds from me I had never made before. Each touch, each kiss seemed designed to break down my resistance, to prove the connection between us transcended the physical, and it was working. When his fingers finally slipped between my thighs, finding the slick evidence of my desire, I cried out, my body jerking at the intensity of the sensation. "So responsive," he murmured against my breast, where his mouth had been teasing the sensitive peak. "So perfect for me." "Caden," I gasped, as his fingers moved with deliberate skill, building a pressure within me that threatened to shatter my composure entirely. "Say it again," he commanded, his eyes finding mine in the firelight. "Say my name." "Caden," I repeated, my voice breaking as his touch brought me closer to some precipice I had never approached before. Something primal flashed in his expression. "Mine," he growled, his control slipping for the first time. "Say it, Alara. Tell me you are mine." The demand cut through the haze of pleasure, reminding me of what was at stake: freedom versus submission, independence versus belonging, my village's safety versus my own autonomy. I turned my face away, unable to give him what he wanted, even as my body betrayed me, responding to his every touch as though it were made for him. He didn't force the issue, didn't demand the acknowledgement again. Instead, his movements became more deliberate, more focused, driving me toward a peak I couldn't resist. When it crashed over me, wave after wave of blinding pleasure, I cried out his name again, my body convulsing beneath his skilled touch. As I lay gasping, trembling in the aftermath, he kissed me gently, giving me a moment to recover, but I could feel his restraint in the tension of his muscles, in the hardness pressed against my thigh. "The night is young," he whispered against my ear, "and I am far from finished with you, little moon speaker." What followed blurred into a tapestry of sensation and emotion. Caden was by turns gentle and demanding, tender and possessive. He brought me to that peak again and again, until I was boneless and pliant beneath him. Only then, when I was mindless with pleasure, did he position himself between my thighs, the question in his eyes requiring no words. I nodded, beyond resistance, beyond denial of what my body and perhaps my heart already knew. He entered me slowly, giving me time to adjust to the intrusion, his eyes never leaving mine as he claimed me in the most fundamental way. The discomfort was brief, overwhelmed by the sense of rightness, of completion I felt with him inside me. "Caden," I breathed, my hands clutching at his back as he began to move. "My Alara," he responded, his voice raw with an emotion I hadn't expected from the powerful Alpha King. "My mate." I didn't contradict him this time, couldn't, when every thrust seemed to bind us more tightly together, when his scent and mine blended into something new, when the pleasure building between us felt too profound to be merely physical. Our bodies moved together as though we had done this 1,000 times before, finding a rhythm that built steadily towards something greater than the peaks I had already experienced. Caden's control began to slip, his movements becoming more urgent, more primal. His mouth found my neck, his teeth grazing the sensitive skin where a claiming bite would mark me as his forever. Fear and desire warred within me. "No," I gasped, even as my body arched toward his mouth. "You promised. No claiming." He groaned against my skin, the sound almost pained, but lifted his head, pressing his forehead to mine instead. "I know what I promised," he gritted out, "but gods, Alara, you are making it difficult to remember why." The honesty in his struggle touched something within me. This powerful alpha, this king who could take whatever he wanted, was fighting his most basic instincts to honor his word to me. Our pace quickened, the pleasure spiraling higher, tighter, until I felt myself balanced on the edge of something monumental. "Let go," Caden urged, his voice strained with his own approaching release. "Let go for me, Alara?" I did, shattering around him with a cry that might have been his name, might have been a prayer. He followed immediately, his powerful body tensing above me as he found his own completion, my name a benediction on his lips. Afterward we lay tangled together, sweat cooling on our skin, our heartbeats gradually slowing. Caden's weight pressed me into the furs, but I made no move to dislodge him, finding comfort in the solid reality of him. "Do you believe me now?" he asked finally, his voice soft in the quiet chamber. I didn't answer immediately, taking inventory of my body, my emotions. What had happened between us transcended physical pleasure, that much I couldn't deny. But did it mean we were fated? Did it mean I should surrender my hard-won independence to become his queen, his mate, his? "I believe there is something powerful between us," I admitted carefully, "but I need time to understand what it means." He rolled to his side, taking his weight off me but keeping me close, one arm draped possessively across my waist. "Dawn is still hours away," he reminded me. "You don't have to decide anything yet." I traced the line of his jaw with my finger, studying the face that had seemed so cold and impassive in the great hall, now softened by satiation and something that looked dangerously like tenderness. "Tell me about your mother," I said, the question appearing in my mind from nowhere. Surprise flickered across his features. My mother, was she like me? A moon speaker? Understanding dawned in his eyes. Ah, no, but she knew of them. She was the one who taught me the old stories, the old ways, before politics and power reduced omegas to commodities and alphas to tyrants. His finger traced idle patterns on my bare hip. She would have liked you. Would have. Pain shadowed his expression. She died when I was 14, the same night my father was assassinated. The pieces began to align in my mind, his distrust of easy submission, his scars, the weight he carried as a king who had ascended the throne too young. "I am sorry," I said simply. He nodded in acknowledgement, then asked, "And your parents? You mentioned your grandmother, but not them." "Fever took them both the same winter, 10 years ago," I answered. The old grief a dull ache now. "My grandmother raised me after, taught me what she could of her gifts before she passed 3 years ago. Leaving you alone, unprotected." I bristled slightly at the implication. "I protected myself. I learned to live with the whispers, the fear, the isolation." His eyes softened. "I did not mean to imply weakness, Alara. Quite the opposite. You survived when others would have broken." His hand moved to cup my cheek. "It is one of the many reasons you are worthy to be my queen." The declaration startled me back to reality, to the stakes of our bargain. "I have not agreed to that." "Not yet," he conceded, his confidence undiminished. "But the night is only half over." Before I could form a retort, his mouth claimed mine again, and rational thought fled once more under the onslaught of sensation. As his hands renewed their exploration of my body, already familiar with what brought me pleasure, I wondered if I was fighting a battle already lost, if Dawn would find me not only physically conquered, but willingly surrendered to this alpha who promised not subjugation, but partnership. And for the first time, the prospect didn't fill me with dread, but with a dangerous, seductive hope. Dawn's first pale light filtered through the high windows, painting the chamber in soft grays and blues. I lay awake, watching the shadows retreat from Caden's sleeping face. In repose, the Alpha King looked younger, the lines of authority smoothed away, his dark lashes casting delicate shadows on his cheeks. One arm remained possessively draped across my waist, even in sleep, unwilling to let me go. The night had been a revelation. After our second joining, we had talked for hours, about his kingdom, about my village, about the spirits I could see, and the legends he had been taught. Then passion had overtaken us again, and again after that, until exhaustion finally claimed us both. Now, as morning light heralded the end of our bargain, I faced the choice I had been avoiding through the long, pleasure-filled night. Stay or go, claim my freedom as promised, or surrender to the bond that had grown undeniable between us. I slipped carefully from beneath his arm, gathering the blue robe from where it had fallen beside the bed. My body ached pleasantly, bearing the evidence of his attention in small bruises and tender places. As I secured the robe around me, I moved to the window, gazing out at the fortress walls, and beyond them the distant smudge of forest that eventually led to Rivermist, home, or at least the closest thing to home I had known. But what awaited me there? Suspicion, isolation. The council's anger when they discovered their plan to insult the Alpha King had backfired. I would return no more welcome than when I left, perhaps even less so. Yet it would be freedom, freedom I had earned through the night just past, freedom to choose my own path, beholden to no Alpha, no matter how compelling. You are still here. Caden's voice, rough with sleep, startled me from my thoughts. I turned to find him sitting up, the furs pooled at his waist, his eyes intent upon me. "Dawn has just broken," I replied, gesturing to the window. "Our bargain is complete. I endured the night." "So you did." His expression remained carefully neutral, but I sensed the tension beneath his calm exterior. "And more than endured, I think." Heat rose to my cheeks at the memory of how enthusiastically I had participated in our final coupling, how I had taken the initiative, explored his body with the same thoroughness he had shown mine. "The bargain stands," he continued when I didn't respond. "You are free to return to Rivermist, with my protection guaranteed for your village." I studied him, trying to reconcile this honorable man with the cold, imposing figure who had selected me from the line of Omegas. "Just like that? After everything you have said about fated mates, about the pain of separation?" Something flashed in his eyes. Pain, perhaps, or resignation. "I keep my word, Alara, always." He rose from the bed, magnificent in his nakedness, and reached for his discarded trousers. "I will have guards escort you home. You will want to leave before the court awakens and begins its gossip." As he dressed, I remained by the window, conflicted. He was giving me exactly what I had wanted, what I had agreed to this arrangement for. Freedom. Yet the prospect of walking away from him, of never again feeling his touch or seeing his rare, transformative smile, created an ache in my chest I hadn't anticipated. What if I stayed? The question escaped before I could reconsider it. Caden remained still, his back to me as he secured his trousers. "Do not play games with me, little Omega," he said, his voice dangerously low. "Not about this." "I am not playing games," I replied, taking a step toward him. "I am asking what would happen if I chose to stay." He turned slowly, his face a mask, but his eyes blazed with a feeling I now knew to be hope. "If you stayed, you would be my queen, my mate, my equal in all things." "Equal?" I echoed with skepticism. "An Omega as the equal of the Alpha King? The court would never stand for it." "The court would have no option." He closed the space between us, his hands resting lightly on my shoulders. "But I will not deceive you, Alara. It would not be simple. There would be opposition, challenges to your authority, and perhaps even danger." "Like the Omega assassin who gave you that scar?" His lips twisted into a grim smile. "Precisely like that. There are those who believe Omegas should remain property, not partners. They would view you as a disruption to the natural order." I mulled this over, weighing the risks against the promise of a place to belong, a purpose beyond mere existence. And what of my gifts, the visions, the spirits? The moon speakers of old were counselors to kings, a link between the physical and spiritual realms, Caden said, his thumbs tracing small circles on my collarbone. "Your gifts would be celebrated, not concealed, used for the good of the kingdom, not condemned as witchcraft." The idea was tempting, to be valued for the very thing that had made me an outcast, to use my strange talents openly instead of in secret. "And us?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "What would become of us beyond the politics and the titles?" A softness entered his gaze. "We would be what we are meant to be, partners, lovers." His hand moved to rest on my stomach, a gesture of unexpected intimacy. In time, parents to children who might inherit both our strengths. The image his words painted, children with his power and my sight, raised not in shame but in pride, stirred a longing in me I had not known I possessed. Children had been an impossibility in Rivermist, where no man would have the strange Omega who spoke to the air. "I do not know how to be a queen," I confessed, giving voice to the fear that lay beneath all the others. "And I did not know how to be a king when my father's crown was thrust upon me," Caden countered. "We learn, we adapt, we grow into the roles that fate has chosen for us." His hands moved to cup my face. But know this, Alara of River Mist, I want you for much more than your title, or your womb, or even your gifts. I want you for the fire within you, the courage that made you meet my gaze when others flinched, the honesty that scorns flattery and false submission." His words wrapped around my heart, squeezing until it was hard to breathe. This was what I had never dared to hope for, not just desire or protection, but recognition, to be seen, truly seen, for everything I was. "I am afraid," I admitted, leaning into his touch despite myself. "Of what?" "Of losing myself, of becoming merely an extension of you, your power, your will." I swallowed hard. I have fought too hard for my independence to give it up, even for this connection between us. Understanding dawned in his eyes. "You believe that accepting the mate bond means surrendering your identity. Doesn't it? Isn't that what being claimed entails? Becoming property, an extension of your alpha's will?" Caden shook his head, his expression becoming fierce. "Not between true mates, never between us." His hand slid down to take mine. "Come with me. There is something I want you to see." Curiosity overriding my uncertainty, I let him lead me to a heavy wooden door on the far side of the chamber. It opened to reveal not another room, but a narrow, winding staircase carved from stone. "Where does this lead?" I asked as he took a lamp from the wall. "To the reason I believe we are fated," he answered cryptically, guiding me up the spiral steps. We ascended in silence, the narrow passage forcing us to walk in single file. After what seemed like an eternity, we emerged into a circular room at the top of a tower. Unlike the lavish royal chambers below, this room was Spartan, its stone walls bare except for shelves filled with ancient-looking books and scrolls. In the center stood a pedestal holding a single object, a crystal orb the size of 2 fists, its interior cloudy as if filled with a swirling mist. "What is this place?" I whispered, feeling a power thrumming in the air that made the hairs on my arms stand on end. "The seer's chamber," Caden replied, placing the lamp on a nearby table. "It has been here since the castle was first built, centuries ago. According to legend, it was designed by the first Alpha King and his mate, a moonspeaker, like you." I approached the pedestal slowly, drawn by the orb's faint, pulsing energy. "And this?" "The Heart of Sight, a relic from the time when Alphas and Omegas ruled as equals, before power tipped the scales. It responds only to those with the gift of true sight, the moonspeakers." As if in response to his words, the mist within the crystal began to swirl more quickly, colors bleeding into the gray, blues, silvers, and hints of gold. "It is reacting to you," Caden said softly. "In the 3 generations of my family, it has never done this." I stared at the orb, mesmerized by the patterns forming and dissolving within its depths. "What does it do?" "According to the ancient texts, it amplifies a moonspeaker's gifts, allowing them to see more clearly, to reach further into the spirit realm, to guide the kingdom through threats both seen and unseen." His voice dropped lower. "It is said that when touched by fated mates, one an alpha of royal blood, the other a moonspeaker, it reveals the path that lies ahead." The implication was clear. "You want us to touch it together?" He nodded, his expression solemn. "If nothing happens, you can walk away, knowing that our connection was merely a powerful physical attraction, nothing more. But if it responds—" He left the possibility hanging in the air. I hesitated, weighing the choice before me. If I touched the orb and it remained inert, I could leave with a clear conscience, free from doubt. But if it confirmed Caden's belief that we were truly fated, could I still walk away? "What if I still choose to leave, even if it shows that we are fated?" I asked, needing to understand the full terms of this new proposition. A flicker of pain crossed his features, quickly concealed. "Then I would respect your choice, as I promised. But I would hope you might consider an alternative, not an immediate claiming, but a courtship, a chance to know each other beyond a single night of passion, a chance for you to see that being my mate would not mean losing yourself, but finding a partner who values every part of who you are." His offer was unexpected, a concession I had not thought an Alpha King would make. Not immediate submission, but a choice. Not possession, but a partnership. "Very well," I agreed, my heart pounding. "We will touch it together." Caden stood opposite me, the pedestal between us. "Place your hand on it when you are ready," he instructed. "I will do the same." Taking a deep breath, I reached out, my fingers hovering just above the crystal's surface. Across from me, Caden mirrored my action, his eyes never leaving mine. In them I saw not the commanding Alpha King, but a man offering his vulnerability, his hope, and the possibility of rejection. "Together," I whispered, and pressed my palm against the cool crystal at the same moment he did. Light erupted from the orb, so brilliant I had to shut my eyes against it. Behind my closed lids, visions flooded my mind in rapid succession. Caden and I standing before a crowded court, his hand holding mine, the two of us hunched over ancient texts, searching for answers to some unseen danger. My body heavy with child, his hands resting protectively on my swollen belly, the two of us old and gray, surrounded by children and grandchildren who bore the marks of both our bloodlines, and through it all a profound sense of rightness, of completion that I had never known, not submission or dominance, but balance, two halves of a whole, each supporting the other's strengths, each guarding the other's weaknesses. When the light subsided and I could open my eyes again, I found Caden staring at me with a look of wonder, of hope, and of a vulnerability I had never expected to see in the Alpha King. "Did you see?" he asked, his voice thick with emotion. I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. The visions had been clear, undeniable. We were indeed fated, not in the simplistic way of children's stories, where an Omega submits and an Alpha possesses, but in the ancient way where two souls find in each other the missing pieces of themselves. "I cannot be a traditional Omega Queen," I said finally, my voice finding its strength. "I will not be silent or submissive, or merely a decoration." "I would never ask that of you," he replied, his hand still on the orb, still connected to mine through the crystal between us. "I need a partner, Alara, not a possession. Someone who will challenge me when I am wrong, support me when I am right, and stand beside me as we face whatever may come. There will be opposition," I warned, "from your court, from the traditionalists who believe Omegas should know their place." His smile turned predatory, reminding me that for all his gentleness with me, he was still the Alpha King, a man who had fought and killed to protect his throne and his people. Let them oppose us. Together, we will show them what true balance looks like, what the kingdom can become when old wisdom is combined with new strength. The pendant at my throat felt suddenly warm, as if my grandmother were giving her blessing to this path, this choice. I remembered her last words to me. "Your heart is the one thing they cannot take unless you surrender it." But surrender implied defeat, a loss. What I felt as I looked at Caden now was not defeat, but recognition, not a loss, but a discovery. "I will not be returning to River Mist," I said, the words feeling right as they left my lips. "Not for good, but I would like to visit, to gather my few belongings, to explain to those who were kind to me." Hope blazed in Caden's eyes. "You will stay? You will be my mate, my queen?" "I will stay," I confirmed, "not because you have conquered or claimed me, but because I choose this path. I choose you, with my eyes wide open." He came around the pedestal then, gathering me in his arms, with a gentleness that belied his strength. "My Alara," he murmured against my hair, "my moon-speaker, my queen." I leaned into his embrace, feeling for the first time the rightness of belonging, without the fear of losing myself. "My Caden," I replied, lifting my face to his, "my king, my mate." When his lips met mine, it was a sealing of promises, a beginning rather than an end. I had entered his chamber as a sacrifice, expecting to endure a night of submission to secure my freedom. Instead, I had found a partnership I had never dreamed of, a future where my strangeness was not a curse but a gift, where the very things that had made me an outcast now made me invaluable. Later, as we descended the spiral staircase hand in hand, I glanced back at the crystal orb, now glowing softly in the morning light. It had shown me not just visions of a shared future, but the truth I had been fighting since Caden first looked at me in that great hall, that sometimes freedom is not found in isolation or independence, but in the courage to trust another soul with your heart. "What are you thinking?" Caden asked as we reached the bottom of the stairs. I smiled up at him, no longer afraid of what lay ahead. "That I did not just endure the night in your bed, Alpha King. I found my destiny there." His answering smile was like the sun breaking through the clouds, transforming his face from handsome to breathtaking. "And I found mine in the Omega who dared to meet my gaze when all others looked away." He lifted my hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to my knuckles. "Welcome home, my queen." Home, not a place, but a person. Not a surrender, but a choice. As Caden led me back toward the royal chambers, where we would begin the work of transforming an ancient kingdom, I felt my grandmother's pendant warm against my skin, a reminder of where I had come from, and a blessing for where I was going. The night I had agreed to endure had ended, but the life I had chosen was just beginning, and for the first time in my memory I was not afraid of what the future held, because whatever came, we would face it together, Alpha and Omega, king and queen. Fated mates, bound not by force or tradition, but by choice and the recognition of the soul that completed our own. Nan 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 nan.